I just want to start with this report actually in Fox News that had some interesting details from Kash Patel world. This is about the Russia collusion investigation, but obviously I think we can't talk about it in a vacuum, as though Kash Patel himself is not getting significant criticism when it comes to the Epstein investigation. But Brooke Singman reported over at Fox News that sources told Fox that documents, a trove, quote, of sensitive documents related to the origins of the Trump-Russia probe buried in multiple burn bags in a secret room inside the Bureau was discovered. Now, sources told Fox that this burn bag system is used to destroy documents that are designated as classified, and that one of the documents FBI officials stumbled upon in this burn bag situation happens to be the classified annex of the Durham report, which, if you are in deep in the sort of Trump-Russia collusion world, you are very familiar with the Durham report. If you are not in deep, just know that you probably remember the name John Durham. Who could keep track of all of the names in this sordid tale? But that's a big deal. So, Shelby, apparently Kash Patel has turned these documents over to Chuck Grassley. There's some anticipation, it seems to be on the right, that more could be coming from this. But I wanted to ask you, because you covered the dynamics behind closed doors so brilliantly in the second administration, first as you were the unofficial Doge reporter over at Semafor, and now that Doge is and now that Doge is gone, there's still all kinds of stuff to cover behind closed doors. So am I right to suggest this can't be viewed outside of that vacuum, or it can't be viewed within a vacuum, that there's something here happening where Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, people who talked a lot about Jeffrey Epstein before the Pam Bondi memo just a couple of weeks ago are going overboard now? I shouldn't say overboard, because that implies that these disclosures aren't in and of themselves significant, but they're working very hard now to sort of prove loyalty to Trump and to the cause. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair take, because I think you can't underscore when this all started coming out, right? It was sort of at the height of the Epstein files, when everybody was mad at Donald Trump and the Trump administration. They were mad at Kash, they were mad at Dan Bongino, they were mad at Pam Bondi. And then Gabbard came in and kind of swooped in with this big story that is sort of red meat for the base, not to say whether it's legitimate or not, but it is something the base is notoriously interested in. And it's just interesting that it came at this time. And you know that they've been looking into this, because you had Kash Patel a few months ago on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he mentioned this sort of finding a bunch of documents in a room. So you know that this has sort of been something that they've been looking into for months. This isn't something that just came about over the past few weeks, but it's notable that it is just now coming to the public eye, and we're just now talking about it.
Yeah, and so where do you see this this going? Because Donald Trump has been hitting it really hard, and yeah, that's not surprising, obviously, because it's a significant, maybe we could say it's a distraction. He almost put it explicitly last week that way. He said, the witch hunt you should be concerned about is over here. So Shelby, with your knowledge of kind of MAGA world and the machinations behind the scenes over at the White House, if you were talking, let's say that I was Barack Obama, not a role I often step into, but I'll do it here for the sake of this conversation. Would you be telling me, like, yeah, this is real, like they have every intention of pursuing this as far as it goes for them?
I think that they do. I think that they're genuine in trying to take this as far as it goes. I think the question is it possible to take it any further, right? Obama was president. It's been pretty well established, this presidential immunity standard, because of Donald Trump in part. And so I think the question is, how would they prosecute him? And I haven't gotten that answer. And maybe that is they're keeping it private, or they don't know. But I think that is a really important question, is where does this ultimately end up? Because you're talking about Obama a lot, and he was president of the United States. That matters. So that, I think, is the most important question of all of this, is regardless of what comes of this, whether it is, you have people on the left saying this is all kind of BS nonsense, that it is a distraction from Epstein. You have people on the right who are really ginned up about it and really excited and say that this is a big news cycle and that Obama should be convicted. But the ultimate question is, how are you going to get there? And so I don't see where this ends, because I don't see how you how you can do that to a former president, because we've been down that road with Trump, basically, in a different way.
Right. The Supreme Court, as you mentioned, the Supreme Court's immunity decision is there. So do you have a sense, because this might be, if you were, again, hypothetically talking to Obama, this might be helpful for Obama or John Brennan or Clapper to hear. And it's just helpful for all of us, I think, to know. Do you have a sense of how the White House sees the politics of this story? Like, is it your sense that they are very excited about the political juice that can be squeezed out of the story? And again, for the sake of this, we're not talking about the substance of the story. We're talking about how the kind of internal dynamics at the White House are approaching it. So is it your sense that they're actually very excited about this and want to really be milking it for the next couple of years, maybe even more?
Yeah, I think they are excited about it. They see this as politically advantageous, both because it is something that the base has been interested in, because it is something that targets Democrats, because it is coming at a time when they're taking a lot of heat from Epstein. And you can tell that they're really interested in it because you were at that briefing last week when they had Tulsi Gabbard come out. That's unusual for them to have any guest, let alone Tulsi Gabbard, DNI. And so you've heard Donald Trump talk about it. Whenever he's asked about the Epstein files, half the time lately, he sort of reverts back and starts talking about Obama now. And so this is certainly something that they want to keep in the news. They want to keep focused on it. When I talk to people who are involved in this effort, they sort of indicate to me also that it is just starting, that it is something that is sort of in the beginning in terms of investigating, in terms of sort of potential criminal proceedings. I think that this is sort of maybe step 3 in 50 in the administration's ideal world.
Okay, so that's fascinating. And you have better sourcing than me, so I'm curious to test this out on you. I sensed that after the uproar over the Bondi Epstein memo, there were real tensions and fissures in the administration that kind of threatened the cohesion that stands in stark contrast with Trump 1.0, which was not coherent or cohesive, I should say. The people were constantly fighting. They weren't on the same ideological page. They weren't on the same political page. This has been completely different than that. And I did sense everyone who was chasing down leads when the rumor that Dan Bongino was actually going to leave his role as deputy FBI director probably sensed there actually were some significant tensions over the Epstein case. And so two-part question for you then, Shelby. One, has this news cycle or this kind of new referral over to the DOJ for investigations into Clapper, Comey, Brennan, and particularly now Obama, has this sort of satisfied or brought people back to the same team in any way? And are some of those still, part 2 here, are some of those tensions still percolating in the background, or have they all kind of gotten back on the same page?
I think that for this specific investigation, the team of the Trump administration is united, right, in sort of trying to find out more information. But to say that because of that, there are still not fissures would be inaccurate. I think that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are still extremely frustrated over the handling of the Epstein files. I think that there's still a lot of anger at Pam Bondi. I don't think that goes away just because they're kind of working together on this Obama stuff and Russiagate. I think both things can be true at once. They're working together on one thing, but there's still a lot of anger. And one of my questions that I have is long term, how are they all going to be able to work together? Because there's real significant animosity. I mean, to the point where Dan Bongino was literally ready to resign a few weeks ago over the Epstein files, and he's still really frustrated. And Kash Patel is also really frustrated. They're handling it in different ways, but the frustration is certainly still there.
Well, can you tell us more about that, how they're handling it in different ways? And even just because, again, if you're not someone that's super well-sourced in the White House and in the administration, you actually might not be seeing any of this because Bongino and Patel have done a fairly good job of making any of those tensions kind of look invisible to, again, somebody who's not well-sourced in the White House or in the administration. But your point here, what you're saying, is that this is still real and still simmering. So what do we know from your reporting behind the scenes of what's going on there?
Well, I think in terms of how they're handling it differently, you have Kash Patel is a little bit more measured He was pretty quick to come out with a statement on Twitter that kind of contradicted what everybody was hearing, basically saying that he is, confident in everything and that he stands behind the president. That is not what I was hearing behind the scenes. There was real frustration there. Whereas you had Dan Bongino, who really let those rumors about his frustration fly. And he's come out since then on on True Social, on X. There's too many social media platforms, and basically sent this cryptic message about how since becoming deputy FBI director, he has sort of uncovered all of this information and all these sort of nefarious things without going into detail. And so he's much more public, I think, in his sort of maybe not overt criticism, but his complaints. And he's more willing to kind of let some of those rumors fly than Kash Patel is.